Welcome to another X Space hosted by Democrats for an Informed Approach. I'm Lisa Simeone. DIAG is a 501c3 organization. Our mission is to wake up our fellow liberals to the harms of gender ideology, the erosion of women's rights, and the medical scandal known as gender affirming care. If you'd like to help us enlighten the public about these issues, please go to our website, di-ag.org, and click on the donate button. While you're there, check out our merchandise store. Today, our focus is on academia, where gender ideology has its roots. We'll be talking about the ideological capture of universities, particularly the psychology departments that train therapists. Our guests are Forrest Romm and Kevin Waldman, both graduate students in clinical psychology at Northwestern University in Evanston, Illinois. They are the authors of a groundbreaking study that revealed the extent to which dissenting views are discouraged on college campuses on a range of topics, including gender. Their findings have been cited by The Economist and by New York Times columnist David Brooks. Welcome, Forrest Romm and Kevin Waldman.
Hello, thank you for having us.
Yeah, thanks so much for having us.
Okay, so Forrest, let's get just like kind of a nutshell, let's get a synopsis of, just very briefly, of the research. This survey that you distributed to students, how you decided, what age the students were they freshmen, were they all the students, the type of questions you asked, and the kinds of answers you received. And then after that, we can get more deeply into the methodology behind it.
Absolutely. Bear with me. I'll be as brief as I can. So Kevin started this research before he and I met at University of Michigan, and then we met at Northwestern and picked up together from there. So essentially, we conducted between 2023 and 2025, we conducted, I believe the number is 1,452 confidential interviews with undergraduate students at both Northwestern and Michigan. Basically, we were curious about what happens to identity formation because of our focus on developmental psychology when belief and identity formation is replaced with orthodoxy.
So this survey started actually with Kevin. I know you both, the stuff that's been quoted, the results, I should say, that have been quoted in the newspaper are from the later survey. But Kevin, you started the survey. So tell us what you started with. Why did you do this?
Yeah, so it was a personal project at the beginning because I went to the University of Michigan in my mid 30s, which is quite rare for a school like that because it's mostly younger students. I think because of that, the the ideology is pushed pretty hard there, pretty heavy. And so even from the beginning of my experience at Michigan, and as a very liberal gay man, not expecting any of this, I started to see just like a pushed agenda, and I was curious about it at the beginning. I never really pushed back because, like I said, I was significantly older than the other students, so I just kind of listened a lot in the back, and I just started to realize that these rumors that I had heard about, specifically gender, being pushed in academia, I really started to think, oh my God, this whole time, was I wrong? Is this actually happening? And so what I started to do was ask students one on one, and then it turned into printing out surveys, getting a little group together, and actually sitting down with the students and having conversations about what's being taught versus what they actually think. And so, although we got some of the results that I was expecting, which is that there is an ideology being pushed in academia, it's what we found that was much more interesting for us on a psychological level is this performance is actually being done out of fear. And so that's kind of what made me and Forrest get together and take this to the next level.
So what kinds of questions, though, did this survey actually ask? Was it specifically about, quote unquote, gender? Tell me the kinds of questions that were asked in the survey.
Yeah, absolutely. So we did specifically ask about gender. I'll just run through a list because it's really not that extensive. We asked if students had ever pretended to hold more progressive views than they actually endorsed to succeed either socially or academically, and about 88% confirmed that they had. And then we asked if they had ever intentionally self-censored, essentially to avoid conflict in three areas. So one of them was political beliefs, another was family values, and then the one that really had some results that kind of blew us away was gender identity, because we as older students have seen this playing out and have been sort of primed to think that most undergraduates are actually genuine adherents to gender ideology. And it turned out 78% of the students told us that they actually self-censor on their beliefs surrounding gender identity.
So, because I think we all know that the way a question is phrased can influence the kinds of answers it elicits, I'm wondering if you asked, let's say, just completely neutral, such as a neutral question, like, have you ever hidden your true views on a political topic? So you're not tipping your hand, right? You're not telling them what you might think, but did you ask, have you ever hidden your true views on a political topic?
We actually frame the questions where we word it saying right from the get-go, if no one ever saw the answer to this question, how would you answer X, Y, and Z? Or if your professors or your parents or your friends never knew what your response was, how would you respond to this?
And
So that's kind of a way where we're aiming for as honest as possible. And of course, like some of the students think I want them to say certain things. So of course there's going to be a margin of error. But I think for the most part, it's we're trying to just create very simple questions where they believe their answer is never going to be seen by the person that is influencing their outspokenness on the topic in the first place.
Yeah,
and but
just to oh, sorry.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Oh,
Go ahead.
just to just to add on to that, we attempted to craft the questions as neutrally as possible, and actually, we're going to be getting peer review status at some point this fall, so everyone will be able to see the methodology. But we attempted to keep the questions as neutral as possible, and I think the overwhelming response regarding progressive views is simply the result, a consequence of the fact that 99.9% of the student body at Northwestern, it holds more progressive views than they do conservative. I think there's like a running joke about like one out conservative student on the campus. So that's why they're so skewed towards the left.
But you started, both of you, there was a reason why you wanted to conduct this survey. I mean, you mentioned something about identity formation, Forrest. Clearly, the two of you must have felt that there's some kind of indoctrination going on, or you wouldn't have wanted to do this. Is that right? That you already absorbed that in your classes. Am I correct about that?
Absolutely. And to be honest with you, one of the things that I see happening in my personal life versus professional is this indoctrination is affecting the gay community in a really negative way. And so just selfishly as a gay man, I don't want my community and my friends, my people, my identity dragged into this really toxic like black hole of identity obsession with identity politics. And so I was personally seeing gay kids being convinced of maybe you're trans or maybe you're this or that. And so this is my personal mission, was to investigate this kind of thing because I believe it's really negatively impacting young gay students who just need to be gay, but they're just not. They're being told that there's something else, and so that's kind of what got me inspired to personally have an investment in this.
And Forrest, your reaction, I'm sorry, your experience, was it similar to Kevin's? Even though
In
you're at a different school. I mean, he's talking about the University of Michigan when he was originally there, and then he transferred to Northwestern, and you're at Northwestern.
Correct. Yes. So my undergraduate degree was at Berklee College of Music, and we've heard a little bit about what gender is like there from Simon Amaya Price, the detransitioner. He's very outspoken about Berkeley's political environment. But my experience is similar. It also diverges. I became really interested in gender identity when my niece was essentially transitioned starting at the age of 6 to living as male. She was given cross-sex hormones or puberty blockers first and then almost immediately. So I began to do a bit of research, and I think that the big difference between someone like me who's semi obsessed with the gender issue and somebody who doesn't care is just that I did some research, and when you scratch the surface, it's extraordinarily shocking. And so I was already getting involved in some activism in the gender space also holding critical, not critical, radical feminist ideas for a very long time, it was pretty much a natural segue for me. But I also experienced what Kevin did in the classroom, which is a very thorough, very suffocating sort of ideological indoctrination that really bothered me on a different level because it was an affront to my desire basically for an education. I remember being extremely angry that I wasn't actually learning anything, and that was one of the things that compelled me towards Kevin when through a lot of cryptic signaling I figured out that he was a like-minded person, the first that I had ever met in higher education.
And so, did these students who answered the survey questions, did they kind of whisper, not whisper, but you know what I mean? Did they say in a way that it felt safe for them to say that they too felt they were being indoctrinated? Did they say specifically, for instance, that they thought they had to espouse what are traditionally thought to be, quote, left wing or, quote, progressive opinions, even if they didn't hold them? Because they were afraid of what? Their professors would give them a bad grade, or their, I don't know, their fellow students would shun them, or what?
Absolutely, though they do say this. So the students, many of the students, especially at Northwestern, actually come from conservative families. But obviously, most students in historically on college campuses are very liberal at that, especially at that stage of their life. But the students do believe that if they were conservative in the classroom, that their grades would suffer, and more importantly, and in terms of the developmental aspect, is that their social lives would suffer. So this isn't. This is just goes beyond the classroom at this point. This is so heavy in the classroom that it's actually trickled into their personal lives, which we can get into also because this is a part of the research that we did, um, of the study that you're talking about, at least. But yeah, I mean, did that answer your question? I think yeah, it's it's basically it's. Here's the thing. So in the 1,452 surveys, I'd say like 60% of them had like actual conversations. So a lot of the students though just filled them out and were done with us. So there's only so much I can get out of the actual the total population. And in my experience though, it was really interesting because to tell the student, you don't have to worry about what I'm going to do with this information. I'm never going to use your name. They actually feel like being honest is almost like being radical. Like they're just so not used to it in our experience with the one on one conversations that they felt free in a way that was almost like they were being radical when all I was really asking for was just an honest opinion. So this is just another factor of it that we were like, oh my God, like this is a reason for this to continue, and we need to maximize the cohort to numerous universities so we can get a better idea of how bad this really gets. And I think it's quite deep, actually. So yeah. So I think, though, to answer the question, the students absolutely believe that the performative progressivism is an essential factor to getting a college degree.
I guess the question comes up, are they being unduly afraid, or is there a good reason for them to fear the atmosphere at these universities? Is is it true that they will get downgraded, for instance, by their professors, or they will get ostracized by their peers? Or, I mean, where did they get this idea, I guess, is the question, because is this really going on? Because you know that this is the first criticism that people are going to level against your research, that, oh, these kids are just, they should be braver and they should just speak their mind and no one's going to suppress their speech. That's what people are going to say.
Yes. So the answer the answer is yes, in general. Both things are true. They're unduly afraid in the sense that the ramifications are capped at a certain, I mean, the worst thing that can happen is that somebody docks you academically and you fight it. But to be totally fair, when I came out essentially as holding certain gender critical views, I personally lost every friend that I had except for one. And I will say this, at least anecdotally, it's absolutely true that there are consequences academically and professionally. I personally, Kevin has had his own experiences with this too, but I remember the first time I really realized this was in a multicultural counseling class that's mandatory for our program. And I cited the cast review in a piece on transgenderism, because to be honest, it was one of the dominating themes in the class.
And we
And
should say that the cast, we should just
oh,
very
yes.
quickly say what the cat, just tell us what the cast review is for those who might, I think our listeners know, but you never know who's tuning in. So,
Sure. The cast review is it came from the UK. It is one of it was at the time and it still continues to be one of the most comprehensive reports on pediatric gender medicine, led by Dr. Hilary Cass, who is a lifelong pediatrician, very well respected. It's in gender critical circles, to be honest, it's known as being like a bit moderate and withholding of criticism. It's certainly not a piece of extremist academia, and it's very well respected widely. And I was told when I cited that work that it had been, quote, debunked, and I was actually called into a semi-official sort of disciplinarian meeting during my finals week. So I eventually ended up with a decent grade in that class, but my academic standing was certainly jeopardized. And one of the most embarrassing things that I will admit is that my entire work that semester had been gender critical because I was being honest, and apparently our program prides itself on honesty. And in the final piece that I had to submit to pass that class, I had this whole, like, very obviously sarcastic, come to Jesus moment where I realized that gender critical and feminist movements are actually not diametrically opposed in their aims, and are actually complementary. And obviously the teacher knew I was like messing with her, but she had no choice but to give me a good grade for it. So
so
the answer is yes. There are very real consequences to your academic standing that are frightening when you're spending that much time and money on an education.
and wait,
Also,
go ahead, Kevin. Go ahead.
I was gonna say, like, when you actually think about we have learned actually as adults that are in college, the balance of power is interesting. So, for example, we can't be gender critical when we write pieces in the Daily Northwestern, which I've written five. And then when Forrest and I teamed up and decided to be gender critical, they literally changed the policy at Northwestern's Daily Northwestern, so we weren't able to use specific words that would actually make it that would help balance out the piece in a way that kind of represented the thesis properly, which is really bad. And also, like, you see, like, it's not like a student's going to get an F per se. It's that they're going to just they're going to struggle in a way where there's this gaslighting that's actually hard to describe, but the professor will make the students believe that they have bigoted views if they question this. And that's really tough at someone at that age, because bigoted is this word now that is so polarizing, and weaponized and completely abused. So it really has no power to someone like me, but to a 22-year-old, this is a tough problem. And so the students also love to wield their power because they're at an age where that's important. And so the students that work for something like the Daily Northwestern, or that are grad students that have to grade the papers, they believe that it's their duty to sort of gaslight a student that questions the orthodoxy. I've learned this.
We're going to get to your background and your age in a minute, but I just want to go back for a second. Forrest, what was the name of this tribunal? That's what I'm calling it. What was this committee or something? What was the name of that you had to go up before this committee and defend your beliefs?
So it was two professors. It was the professor of my course, and then what they call the course lead, who's essentially the chair of that course. And she was more observing and, ming and nodding, just kind of being a menacing presence in the background. And they didn't. I don't think that it was part of any like established procedure, because there was, no notification about that or anything. But essentially, so in our course, I actually am blanking on what they call them, but we have certain professional development criteria that need to be met, and it gets assessed every couple of semesters. And what they were telling me officially is that they were concerned about my professional development because of my unwillingness to admit that trans women are women. And just to add on to what Kevin said, the censoriousness really shouldn't be underestimated, because the Daily Northwestern is a very reputable student paper. We had both published there extensively. And I'm not exaggerating, 3 days after we submitted a piece that was reasonably critical of pediatric gender medicine, they announced to everybody that they were officially adopting the Trans Journalist Association style book, which
Ugh.
prohibits the use of, biological sex, and basically prohibits the ability to tell the truth if you want to be published. So that's how extreme the environment is.
I just have to think, I'm just picturing you going before these professors who are going to quote school you in the correct thought processes. And I can't help but think of struggle sessions in Maoist China, which obviously I've only read about, haven't been to one, have read about in history books. And that's what it sounds like. You are going to be brought to heel because you have the wrong opinions. And we're going to bring you before this tribunal or these two people or however many there are to make sure if you want to graduate. I mean, no one's going to say it outright, but I'm sure the subtext is if you want to graduate for us and if you want to get good grades, you better toe the party line.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. They were very clearly hoping, or not even, they were clearly demanding one specific outcome of that meeting. And I mean, I'm not someone who's known for holding back on my opinion. I'm not someone who's known for I don't know, being willing to just adopt the party line, but even I was intimidated into saying things I didn't believe. And admittedly, I'm not proud of it. But as Kevin said, if I'm in my 30s, I'm 33, and if I was a 22-year-old, I would have been intimidated beyond belief.
Okay, that Kevin, we need a little bit of background because your history, your biography is very interesting. How you came even to, but how you came to this field of research. You didn't have the normal trajectory that students have of high school and college and graduate school and blah blah blah. So just give us a little of your background. You've already mentioned that you're an older student, that you're a gay male. Give us a little of your background, how you came to this field of study.
Sure. Yeah, it's been a journey. I went to college at 33 at Michigan. Before that I had a completely different career that kind of led me to mental health. I wanted initially to go to med school, but then I quickly realized I don't even like school enough to be doing that journey. So I decided, okay, let's do psychologist. And I've really enjoyed learning like the other side of this world that I never knew to be true. Because, like I said, as a really liberal gay guy, I worked in the beauty industry. I've been a hairstylist and a wig designer my entire life up until this. Then I randomly went to healthcare after I was done doing wigs, and that's kind of when I worked at Detroit Medical Center, and I started to see gender stuff there, by the way, in the HR process. I worked in communications, but there was a lot of we need to hire this person in order to have this funding given to our department, and it must be someone that identifies with this. And so I started to see that the politics behind gender. As someone who denied this my entire life, I was a very blind loyalist to gender and to just LGBT issues in general. And now I believe I'm doing the same thing. So when I got to Michigan and I started to see what we're talking about here, specifically with gender, I know in this conversation, but there's other things like anti-Semitism and just lots of pushed anti-white, anti-America. Um, I started to realize that research is something that I find interesting because it's really represented poorly. So I've done a couple of really hardcore competitive internships, and I know that especially around the gender topic, things are buried on purpose when they start to see results that won't push the narrative. This is something that I don't like. And so I'm like, I would tell people in my life, like, this is actually happening. And then, of course, you're a conspiracy theorist. And I try and explain, like, I witnessed it with my own eyes. I was a part of the conversation. This isn't something that I read about. They're actually burying data that would say that these kids don't believe the gender narrative, or that at least a bigger portion of them aren't on board with it if they're given the chance to be honest. And so I decided to pursue research for now. I don't know. I think it's a good fit, especially when you find someone like Forrest to do it with, where it's like we're very, very different people with the same kind of drive to just have honesty be a part of the future, because we see this as one of the topics that's frankly ruining the country. So to kind of answer your question, it's been a journey.
Well, I wanted people to understand that you were a hair designer and wig designer for many years, and that you spoke to women, including cancer patients, and
Yeah.
you felt an affinity. You wanted to work with them and help them and make them feel beautiful, and that kind of led to your interest in psychology. Is that right?
That is right. It's strange how that all worked out, but that is what happened. Yeah.
Okay, let's talk a little bit about the students. We already did mention that the students are afraid to speak up, but I'm trying to figure out what's the student body like? Is it representative of other similar colleges and universities? So we have the University of Michigan, we have Northwestern University. I mean, I would think they're pretty elite schools. They're not easy to get into. So what kind of students go there? When the word diverse, I hate it because it's such a buzzword, it's such jargon, and usually when people use that word today, they mean simply race and ethnicity, and they don't even consider class, which it's a huge subject. But are the student bodies at those two schools diverse, or how would you describe them?
Yeah, I can say they're pretty diverse. So one of the things that's really cool, we're actually branching out. So currently, right now, we're working with 5 universities just around Chicago. So we're going to have, give me a couple months, and we'll have a lot more data for you in terms of actual diversity. Because a school like Northwestern, it's extremely elite, and psychologically, the students have been very, very driven in a way that there's little diversity, I think, of thought, because the results are all that really matter to these students. So they're going to believe what they need to believe to succeed. Michigan was a little different. Um, it was more of like a real world. I liked that the students at the University of Michigan a lot more, just personally, because which is interesting because I'm from Ohio and my family despises Michigan, like the University of Michigan, but
Okay.
like, so I actually hated the school because it was like beat into me from childhood. Talk about indoctrination. I was trained to hate this university, and then I ended up going there in my 30s. It was very bizarre. But I thought the students there were very, very impressive people. That's why it was actually being around such candid, outspoken students that gave me the idea to just start interviewing them, because they liked talking about things. There was so much confidence in students at that school. Northwestern's a little different. Northwestern's extremely rigid, academically, and I'm not saying that's a negative thing. A lot of these kids are insanely impressive in ways that I could never even fathom. They have a discipline level at that age that I would have never possessed in a million years. So I really admire them in many ways. But the schools are very different. So that's why I was happy to use those two schools. And like I said, in the future, Psych Form is going to be doing as many campuses as possible. So we'll have many different pools to be dealing with.
The conclusion that the faculty at these schools further left than the student body, is that accurate?
There's like two answers to that. The general answer is yes. The faculty seem to be quite left. And by quite, I mean like insanely left. Okay, but then um, like I thought I had a theory about this, and then I was like, okay, it's like 100 times more left than I thought. But then what's happened? This is really interesting. And I'm not sure if you were aware of this, but Forrest and I have received a number of emails from professors from around the country, who have reached out to let us know that although these are liberal professors, for the most part, we've of course heard from conservative professors thanking us and, saying, please don't stop. Like, I can't. Okay. But what we're hearing is that even liberal professors are saying this has gone too far. We were on board with this at one point, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, and now even the professors have to have this performance going with the gender topic, because if you go against it, there's a number of things in the administrative level that can negatively impact their lives, and they're afraid to go against the orthodoxy as well. So a lot of them, of course, I think, are on board with it, are pushing it for they believe it's the right thing to do. But I think many are also trapped the way the students are.
But what was the reaction in general, Forrest, to this research after you published it?
Well, that really depends on whose reaction. If you're asking about, our classmates, if you're asking about administrators, or even if you're asking about my own parents, the response has been varied. And I think the majority of people at Northwestern don't seem to be aware that we're conducting this research, which I personally view as a blessing. They don't tend to, at least the people in our program, don't seem to be particularly compelled to, read the news compulsively or read journals, even, which is a different problem that we're not here to discuss. But the response that we've received from professors, as Kevin said, has been absolutely outrageous. We were really shocked by it. It's very heartening and disheartening at the same time because it means that, there's a bit of pluralistic ignorance going on where everybody seems to think that everybody else believes something and is modifying their views accordingly in the public sphere, and privately feels quite different. So it's great to know that we're not alone in thinking that something is very wrong, but it's also frustrating because, I mean, how do you persuade people to to come to the realization that these issues are important enough that it's worth jeopardizing their professional and social standing? It's a big thing to ask of people.
So you haven't personally, the two of you, suffered any kind of repercussions or consequences that might affect you in the future, or your schooling so far.
We had a bit of a scare from the IRB office at Northwestern, but
And
we
what's the
sorted it
IR?
out.
What is
Uh,
IRB?
I'll, I'll let Kevin take this one because he was more directly involved in this conversation. He'll have more clarity.
Okay,
Okay,
what's IRB?
institutional review board. So this is so we can get our work legitimized on campus. And so we now have found, so starting our own private lab called Psych Forum, which is an LLC and it's going to be a nonprofit. Well, we can talk about that maybe later. But this is a response to a lack of support at the universities. Okay, so we clearly put together a study. We wanted to get support from a professor. It did not happen. Then we went to IRB. Then we spoke to a number of administrators. It just wouldn't happen. I also kept getting the same kind of vibe, which is like, please, like, kind of like nudging me, wink, wink, please do this work, but like, I can't be on board with you, like, with my name. I kept hearing things like that from professors. That really did happen a number of times at both universities, um, where I was starting to realize that I'm in a territory that's could be dangerous. So we decided to reach out to a couple. There's a really well known guy at Northwestern who gave us some good advice and has kind of guided us through the process. But besides him, we have had pretty much zero support. And so I mean, I had like a 23-page proposal. No one would read it. Well, a couple read it. No one would move forward, and they all want to see someone. It's like in the theory they want us to do it, but they can't be attached to it in any way because they're afraid for their careers. And I really believe that that's what's happened here, because the study is impressive what we did. The students are happy we're doing it. So I'm not sure why we haven't had the kind of support. It's not a level playing field when it comes to gender. So if you want to do studies on gender and be LGBTQIA, whatever, they're going to give you whatever money you want. But even when you're a gay man saying, I just want to ask honest questions, but it is going to challenge this orthodoxy in a very balanced and respectful way, the answer is flat out no, you're not doing it. Or you can
So you're
Oh, I
go
was gonna say,
ahead, go
or
ahead.
just do it somewhere else. But we're like, no, we're doing it here.
So your credentials don't count. I mean, you're a gay man. You've been liberal all your life. You are outside of the mainstream just by virtue of being gay, but that's not good enough, right? That's not
Oh,
good enough.
absolutely. No, when you actually ask questions, you go from gay and homophobic somehow. Like it just doesn't. I'm a self-loathing gay if I'm asking questions about transgender people, and that's the that's the kind of game that this is, where You have to have a thick skin to do what Forrest and I do. She being a woman and me being, I mean, it's like they want you to be, it'd be easier for them to tolerate it if we were like these big, this like idea of like these terrible men. But in fact, we're actually in the LGBT community and we're just trying to figure out what the truth is. But yeah,
Yeah.
identity wise, if you're not what they need you to be in that moment, then your identity is actually weaponized against you.
When we did the preliminary discussion, Forrest and Kevin, Forrest, this really stuck in our minds. You said to us that you felt when you were in class, and this is in the psych department, right, the psychology department, you felt like you were going to school in the Soviet Union. Which, I mean, people are going to say, "Oh, that's extreme. That's crazy. I get that doesn't go on in this country. We're in a free country." But tell us what you meant, why you said that.
Yeah, I understand that to some people that may sound hyperbolic, but I meant it and I will defend it. I've been reading Ion Pacepa, who was the highest ranking intelligence officer in the Soviet Union who defected to the US, and he talks a lot about desinformatia, which is essentially a disinformation campaign that turns an enemy country against itself from the inside. So that's what I was thinking of when I said that. I was a little concerned that I myself was being hyperbolic originally when I began to have that thought, and then Kevin and I have a working relationship now with someone who actually grew up in the Soviet Union, and I remember saying that to him and then being immediately embarrassed, thinking he was gonna like laugh or contradict it, and he was just like, "Yes, that's exactly why this matters, and this is exactly why we have to stop it." And to me, it's the level of censorship. I mean, to be clear, Kevin and I, oh, sorry to out you, Kevin. Kevin and I are both Jewish, so if this was the Soviet Union, we wouldn't be allowed in the university. So to that extent, it is not like the Soviet Union. But in terms of there being a very specific unspoken party line that when deviating from it, you risk all kinds of personal and professional issues, short of being disappeared and tortured, it is very strikingly similar to at least the early part of the Soviet Union when there was a massive academic purge. It was one of the first things that they did, and thinkers, mathematicians, philosophers, etc., artists, cultural critics were all punished in the most extreme ways if they dared to deviate from the party line.
Well, so let's talk about what is that party line? I mean, what's being taught? If you can distill this, what's being taught in the psych departments? What's being taught? What's the curriculum?
I can
Well,
give a
for
yes, sorry.
I was
Go
gonna say,
ahead.
Forrest, why don't you explain our class that the why don't you explain the topic that made us partner up, which I think you know what I'm talking about, where the word woman was not, yeah.
It's honestly so disgusting to me that it's hard to talk about in a serious way. We, so as I mentioned previously, I believe we have to take a mandatory multicultural counseling class. And Kevin and I were in different sections. We had different teachers, both had abhorrent experiences. This was the first thing that happened in my academic experience at Northwestern that really, I mean, radicalized me in a way. It radicalized me in terms of it encouraged me to commit to telling the truth at all costs. And it was the fact that every single week we were devoted to discussing how counseling is best applied to different quote unquote minority groups, different disenfranchised identities. And women as a class, as a category, a sex class, were never mentioned, except for one time when our professor, who's one of her primary professional endeavors is working with quote unquote trans women, so men who say that they're women, which we actually had to listen to a whole bunch of sessions that she had with these men, which I found really upsetting, but that's irrelevant. So she sent out a memo to the class where the only time she mentioned women, real actual women, was by saying that she attached a list of like it was like a one-page thing of the 10 talking points that are associated with feminist therapy, which I really wish it wasn't called that because it's third wave feminism at best. But she added a caveat after the attachment, which was that this is a direct quote: "This does not need to apply to women, which she put in quotation marks.
Ugh.
She put the word women in quotation marks. And I something in me just like, I guess, snapped, and I just had enough. It was so abhorrent to me. The only instance we ever discussed domestic violence in any capacity, which, as I'm sure everyone here knows, is an epidemic that women continue to face, was a paper about domestic violence in lesbian relationships, and then another one that claimed that women are equally culpable of perpetrating domestic violence against men in intimate relationships. So I was just shocked, I guess, and thank something that I linked up with Kevin shortly after that, because I was really considering dropping out of this program.
So, if I understand correctly, the two of you and your classmates were being trained to be therapists someday. Is that right?
Correct. That's the core part of the
Yeah.
Okay.
curriculum.
Okay. So you're supposed to be trained to be therapists. Women constitute half or 51% of the population. I mean, like women, us, like me, like you, Forrest, women. But they wouldn't use the word women in class unless it was in quotation marks. Like, how are you supposed to counsel women? And how are you supposed to counsel victims of domestic violence or rape victims or assault? I mean, I don't get this. How are you supposed to? Did your classmates, did they balk at this? I don't get how
No,
you. I
they
don't get it.
didn't. I actually, being the older, more sagacious woman in the class with a bunch of 20-year-olds, I actually tried to broach it with some of them privately, and they just it was just blank stares. They don't even know. I mean, they don't even know that that's supposed to be a primary component of any ethical counseling or psychology program.
Yeah.
Go
I
ahead. Go ahead, Kevin.
yeah, it's just everywhere in the program too. It's talked about a lot at Northwestern. It was talked about a lot at the University of Michigan, and from the information that we're hearing, um, from these other universities, it's similar there too. It almost seems like the more elite the university, the higher level of this occurs. Um, and so, I mean, I don't know if you saw this, but Harvard just hired a drag queen to teach 2 classes at
Uh,
Harvard in
no.
drag, and the drag queen's first name is Lahore, and it
Lahore
just goes.
Vagistan is the full name. Lahore
Vagistan, Lahore
Vagistan.
Vagistan.
Correct.
This is satire or parody writes itself.
I know.
If you put this in a novel, nobody would believe it, or they would. I mean, even Monty Python. This is like a step too far, even for it would have been for Monty Python.
Horace just
Lahore
sent me a Monty
Vagistan.
Python quote that was literally what we're living through right now.
Yeah,
Um,
lifted from
but
Richard Dawkins, of course.
um, the main thing is that I think someone just said something that made me realize, people don't believe that this is the level of this that we're dealing with. They think that their kid will get past it, and a lot of the kids will. They'll grow out of it, they'll whatever. But there's still, I mean, our job as therapists is going to be to have a responsibility to the truth, and this is something that I just feel it's so to kind of say like why Forrest gets the blank stares. Um, it is fear. So, like, the students are, whether they believe it or not. I mean, some of the students are younger in our program and just believe this stuff, and that's fine. But the adults, I think, they're afraid to be, targeted in a way that like I said, you must have a thick skin if you're going to bring these topics up publicly at a school like Northwestern. I've actually had to, like, before I've opened my mouth, I've been like, okay, the entire room is going to hate me, but I'm going to say it anyway because it needs to be said, and it's usually only about the gender topic. The gender thing is the one thing where I'm just like, I won't do it. Like, I won't. I'll do what I need to do to get the grade to pass, but I'm done pretending that, because it actually, if transgender exists, it's so rare, and this umbrella that they've created is actually marginalizing the actual trans people. It's like the system is there to just continuously destroy over and destroy and destroy, so the business gets bigger and the people get broader, and it's never ending, and so we're left with either you're one of these people that's going to be like targeted for saying it, or you're just going to be quiet. And 99% of people out of 100 are quiet. And I mean, it's just that's just where we're at.
And when you say saying it, I just want to get specific here. Saying that there are two sexes, that men are men and women are women, and that nobody can morph into the opposite sex. Is that what you mean by it? You can't say it.
Yeah, so I mean, there's many different versions of it, but that's the it that I'm talking about. And I also do think, though, that there are a number of conservative or transgender. I happen to follow a couple of conservative transgender people who have really explained their identity in a way that I have a lot of respect for, which is that they're a biological man that is living life as a full blown woman, but is still a biological man with a mental disorder, gender dysphoria. And the physical transition is the response to the mental disorder that they have, and that they live life knowing that these are the facts that they're just going to always have to deal with. I wish that, and I'm not an expert on this topic, but as a researcher, I respect the people that are explaining their situation like that, and these are the people that have also taught me 5, 6, 7 years ago that this umbrella is destroying life for them, and that's the thing that's kind of sparked it for me.
I have to wonder if I know that this ideology is going on everywhere in academia, in all kinds of schools. I mean, I see it, even though I'm no longer in academia, but we all can see this. But I'm wondering if the psychology department is, I don't know, more susceptible, that the kind of person who's more likely to go there is going to be more woke, to use the term, that the kind of person who goes into that field of therapist is that person. Do these psychology departments attract more of those kind of people, is what I'm asking.
I mean, to be very candid, it's a soft science at at best. It has a bit of an identity crisis. It really prides itself on adhering to the scientific method, but also constantly pushes texts on us that say that the scientific method is like a white Western Eurocentric construct that needs to be abolished. So it's not rigid. It's not methodologically rigid in using the scientific method, and to that extent, I think it is sort of I don't know, a bastion for people who may have good intentions, I'm not sure, who probably have a bit of cluster B narcissistic tendencies and think that they can be someone's savior. And with the gender thing, like this is one of the great things about working with Kevin is that I'm what you would call an extremist on this issue. Like I don't believe there is such a thing as true trans. I don't think men can ever be women. And I'm sure that like the few people here agree with me, but the reality is that I believe that this field is a really good place for people who use it deliberately and intentionally. And if Kevin and I can do the kind of research that would help people realize what my position is, which I fundamentally fully believe to be the unequivocal truth, then I am going to take this, I'm going to capitalize on this opportunity and take it as far as I can to be in a place where I can influence people on a larger scale. But I will say it's not a rigorous discipline. The one thing that graduate psychology has made me realize is that I need to do PhD in psychology because I just need some kind of academic discipline. But that being said, it does afford certain opportunities. And yes, to answer your sorry, I was rambling a bit on a tangent. Yes, to answer your question, it attracts a certain kind of psychological profile of maybe not the brightest, possibly well intended, very narcissistic, very do gooder savior complex kind of person. And Kevin may disagree, but that's one of the greatest things about working with him is that we can disagree on some things and come to very interesting new revelations.
Kevin, do
Yeah,
you want to add anything to that?
yeah, we have different experiences and different perspectives on this. I do think that a lot of the people in our field have wonderful intentions, and they just are misled down, unfortunately, this the blind loyalty to this orthodoxy, fearing challenging it in any way. I think that a lot of people, and also to kind of go on what Forrest was getting at, I think there's another factor to it, which is um, we believe in now in psychology, in this, in at least in the academic sense, from where we stand in our experience so far, is it's an only affirmation methodology. So if someone comes, we're learning that if someone has an issue, we just affirm it. If someone is trans, we affirm it. If someone is bi or whatever, if they identify as a peacock, we have to affirm that. Otherwise, we're marginalizing them. And so that's not what I will be doing as a therapist. It's what I will do to get an A at Northwestern. But in reality, it's a very hard discipline, in my opinion. It is also like a soft science. Like I don't really see it. We agree that it's not like I'm not with this is not brain surgery, but it is very important, and that's why I'm choosing to pursue this with my life. Is because I take it seriously, but it's also very hard discipline. Like going to therapy in some cases is a lot of hard work for someone. And so to only affirm them is to actually make them worse, in my opinion. And so this is the kind of thing that I see a lot of so far. Also, we are still just in grad school, but in general, she and I are well informed on, I mean, for laymen, in layman's terms, I just think that I'm hoping that what I see in my professional life differs from what I'm seeing in the academic one.
Well, this is a great segue. How do the two of you see your professional future? Forrest, you said you're going to go on to get a PhD, but beyond that, what do you see in your professional future? And then after that, we'll go to Kevin.
Yeah, I mean, this is all it's a new trajectory for me because like I said, I was a performing musician in Nashville before this. I studied the banjo for my undergraduate degree. So this is very different. But what I've quickly realized is that I really like research. I want to be in the stacks, in the back room, away from people, just asking difficult questions. Someone told me my one of my best friends, her girlfriend, told me that I'm exactly the kind of insane person who would spend like 8 years just asking one single question and trying to get the real answer. And I want to make a career out of that. I like working.
That's
I
so
like working
you.
with people. Yeah, yeah. I
That's
will. I will
literally
be in
you.
counseling with people to make a living, and I believe that it can be really helpful. But like Kevin said, it's a very consumer model of business now. The counseling profession. I'm very curious to see what happens in the Supreme Court case in Colorado with, and I'm blanking on the name of it. This is why I am not a lawyer, but addressing the issue of categorizing exploratory therapy, literally just like the type of therapy that used to be known as therapy, as conversion therapy, because I think that people in the therapy profession are in a bind where, I mean, you can actually, in some states, you can lose your license for failing to affirm, which is a travesty. It's a very
Wow.
devastating reality. And I had a very long, so I found like those single. Okay, to backtrack just a tiny bit, and I'll be quick. But we're in the internship slash practicum portion of our education, which is required for all students, where you actually get hands-on experience as a therapist. So I'm working with clients now, and somehow I really lucked out and found the only conservative therapist in the United States to be my direct supervisor. And she and I mean, I was raised extremely progressive. So she and I come to the gender issue from very different places, but I can actually speak openly with her about this. And so I asked her, I said, what do I do if I get a client who is questioning their gender identity, quote unquote, and is, insisting that I affirm them and I cannot work with them in good conscience? And she said, well, what you do is you refer them to a gender clinician. And I know, based off of research and off of just my life experience seeing this happen, that is the number one surefire way to ensure that a child will be physically mutilated through the process of puberty blockers, same-sex hormones, etc. So sending somebody, referring them to a gender clinic, making the claim, I can't work with them because it's outside of my area of expertise, is basically the only way you can get out of that situation and not put your license on the line. But I personally, ethically, could not do that because I would feel like I was complicit in something that I believe to be an egregious harm inflicted on vulnerable people. So there are things like that in the field right now, these almost impossible to traverse ethical dilemmas that I'm just not really sure how I can navigate them effectively and successfully. So there's a lot of stress around being a active therapist. And I mean, I will do it because people need someone out there who thinks differently. But research, I think, for me, is going to probably be the best solution to all of this.
And Kevin, what about you? How do you see your career panning out?
So, Psych Forum, this lab that we started, I really want to see what we can do with that and let it spread its wings and give other people like us kind of a network and see what we can do with that. So I'm hoping the next couple of years we can watch that succeed. I want to be a therapist. I want to work with people like maybe athletes. I'm really interested in performance and um, I don't know. I mean, I think the sky's the limit. I'm not as invested in research. I'm more like I like to be in front of people talking, and I think that there's a spot for that's why she and I make a really good team because I think that that balance is pretty cool that we have where we're very different. Like I want to talk more with people and kind of spread a message. We need leaders in this fight, and so it's going to take people that want to work with the people on the outside, not behind the scenes, and that's kind of what I'm interested in doing. But in general, I'd love to go private practice and see where that goes.
Okay, well, this is perfect. Let's take some questions from the audience.
Yeah, hi. Sorry, I only just bumped into this space. Like I've been listening for 5 minutes or so. Have you guys bumped into like Parents for Ethical Care? Like, are you guys connected to other organizations or activist organizations that are moving in this space? There's like Therapists for Ethical Care. There's Parents Segum. There's doctors that have a I think they all have like PEC and SEGM. They're all acronyms, so I kind of get them all mixed up. But I would imagine that there are bunches of well-established groups that would be more than interested in assisting you guys however they can.
Are you sorry?
Yeah, we had a meeting with Segum shortly after our piece in the Hill on this particular survey was published. We met with Bill Malone, Sarah Mittermeier, and a couple other folks,
And I
and
should say
I mean, it was
is that the
amazing.
is that the Society for Evidence-Based Medicine? Is that what that
Yes.
stands for?
Yes,
Okay.
evidence-based gender medicine. Yes, which the Southern Poverty Law Center has deemed a hate group, but
Oh,
obviously is not a hate group. We're in touch with them, and I've been a long admirer of their work, so that's very exciting to me. We're working on a piece right now for Open Therapy Institute, which is a really interesting organization that Kevin actually turned me on to. So yes, we're getting connected. I personally I'm a member of DIAG. I'm the Massachusetts state contact for WDI USA, which is a radical feminist organization. So this space isn't totally new to me, but we're still getting connected with people who's have the intersection of gender criticism and also the therapy component.
also, here's a question. Is there any sign that the faculty at any of these schools is backing off in the face of Trump's edict, his executive order on transgender?
Man, I
This is a
wish.
part. Yeah, I feel like many have doubled down, unfortunately. So that's also something I don't feel 100% comfortable speaking on, only because I work I almost solely focus on students. Um, but I feel like from what I'm hearing, it's a lot of doubling down. But like I said, I'd have to look more into it. I don't think I think that Trump just infuriates these people and um solutions would be if Trump would stop talking about certain things, we could get a little bit more done because they answer a lot of what these people focus on is what is Donald Trump like? What is his administration like? And let's hate that and what does he
Yeah.
dislike, and let's obsess over that. Let's teach what they dislike. And I think that there's a lesson that could be learned by certain people being quiet on these topics.
Ellie might have something to say about that as an official representative of DIAG, because I'm not an official representative. My observation as just a citizen is that Trump is making our job much harder in this struggle, because people just knee jerk automatically hate everything he does. I mean, I hate him, but the executive order has just made the Democratic Party double down from my observation. But Ellie, you might have something to say about what DIAG thinks about it.
Yeah, I mean, definitely there's, well, it's hard to say it's a doubling down because I don't know how much more extreme they could get. But I think
That's true.
in terms of like the rhetoric is policy probably hasn't changed at all, but rhetoric has ramped up. It's almost like, well, this gives us a reason to really, really be fired up and fire up the base. But I don't see,
Well, it also,
I personally,
I think
yeah.
it also makes them, meaning our adversaries in the struggle, more likely to dismiss research such as what Kevin and Forrest have done, just to dismiss it out of hand because they are so fired up about it.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. I'm not sure there's any way to avoid that, though, to be totally honest. If Trump was saying, I love kittens, they would be like putting kittens in a burlap sack and
Right,
taking them down to the river.
right.
Anything he says. I mean, he co-authored, well, not co-authored, he allowed the Independent Women's Forum to author that initial executive order, and they did a great job. They said everything that our side, so to speak, wanted them to say. And I don't know. I mean, I'm not going to sit here and defend Donald Trump. I'm not like a fan of Donald Trump, but most criticisms I could make about him, I could equally make about Bill Clinton. And at some point, I personally feel like we need to take our wins where we can, because there is quite literally no one and nothing that could be said that would allow people to, I don't know, forsake the sort of identity aspect of their political allegiances. It's a very difficult thing that's very entrenched in people's identity. And oftentimes people just form their opinion in opposition to what the, so to speak, other side is saying.
Exactly. Does it make a difference at all that some universities are public and some are private? Like the University of Michigan and Northwestern. Well, Northwestern is private. Is the University of Michigan private?
No, it's
It's
public.
public. Okay, so I don't know if you can speak to any differences in opinions between the student bodies of private universities and public universities, because don't the public universities have to worry about funding from the government?
They're fighting it. I mean, my joke answer is that the only difference is that you can't FOIA request a private university's records. But in reality, I mean, my experience, what I've seen, what I've read, and what I've heard is that they're doing their due diligence to say that they're going to cooperate while also insisting that they're not going to cooperate. I mean, the recently ousted president of Northwestern is a great example. It's not a public university, but it's still apt, Michael Schill. So after the FSSA, it's the I'm trying to blinking on what the acronym stands for. Something Students for Fair Admissions. The Supreme Court ruling that overturned affirmative action. He both said that he was going to cooperate with the ruling, and also that he was still just as dedicated to, giving opportunities to people based off of their identity category. So I don't know how they're getting away with. I mean, he's not getting away with it because he was just replaced, but they're doing everything they can to sort of say what they need to say to stay above board, and also completely defy any kind of orders that they're supposed to follow.
This is a great conversation. My question is this: Are you, Forrest and Kevin, in touch with any other universities and colleges that are also doing the same thing? I can tell you, I personally know a private university in South Carolina whose Free Speech Alliance is doing the same thing, and the results are remarkably similar to what you are finding. Are you is there any kind of a network of folks like you that are aggregating this information? Because some could say, well, Northwestern is an outlier, and I don't think it is. So I'm just curious about that. And, it's part of the Free Speech Alliance. We have many, many colleges and universities across the country that have this Free Speech Alliance. And I know for a fact that one of them here in South Carolina is doing exactly that.
I would love to get in touch with the university that you're speaking about. So I would love to know which one. Because I'll reach out to them. We are in. So we created this website, psychforum.com, and we're hoping that this turns into kind of a network for people to have a base conversation on, and we want to platform other people that have similar research ideas that we have, so we're hoping that we literally just launched. It's a baby website at the time, but when it starts to crawl and take off, we're really hoping that this can be a way for all these people that we're talking about to communicate, or to be centered around. But
Great.
yeah, I would love to know. I would love to know the university you're talking about, because I will personally
Ellie,
reach out.
can you put us in touch offline?
Absolutely.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you,
And
and
also,
Lawrence.
we
Appreciate it.
we actually are in contact with other universities in the Midwest.
Oh
Initially,
yeah,
we're
yeah.
going to focus on the Midwest and then possibly branch out to the coasts. But yeah, we're going to be conducting the same study with IRB approval, meaning we'll be able to collect more identifying data, such as registered political party, gender, sex, whatever, all those things. So yes, we're branching out. We're always interested in getting in touch with people we have not talked to yet, but there has been a really impressive showing of support for what we're doing and invitations, both to collect data at different universities and also professors telling us they're going to include the data we have so far in their curricula and things like that, which is it's very cool and it's very exciting.
Great, thank you.
Have you connected with FIRE, which they changed what it stands for? Freedom of individual rights and expression. Are you in touch with them?
Not yet, but I mean, we're still just getting off the ground at this point. But
Yeah.
we see us moving in that direction, though. Yes.
Yeah, when we do get in touch with Greg Lukianoff, I'm gonna let Kevin take that one because my number one priority would be arguing with him about pornography as free speech. So I'm a little a little disillusioned on the FIRE front.
Hi, sorry, I also just came in like 5 minutes ago. First of all, Forrest, I don't think that you're extreme at all. I think the only sane perspective is that there should be no medicalization ever. I did kind of want to just clap back at the comments about Trump, love him or hate him. If medicine and therapy refuse to self-regulate, then executive actions needs to be taken, and I think that's part of the problem that we face. I wanted to ask: do you guys have the link to your material in your bios so I can take a look at your site? I wanted to ask if you were in touch with the critical therapy antidote people. There are so many people that you can be in touch with. And then I have some particular research questions that I would love to have permission to DM you about, Forrest. I'm an ROGD mum, and I've been around in this issue for fucking forever. But yeah, those were my comments and questions. Thanks.
I mean, yes, absolutely, of course. I'm very sorry to hear that. I cannot even imagine what it would be like to have a child caught up in this, and that's really terrible. But please, yes, feel free to reach out. I'll put my email somehow in the chat. I've never actually been in an X space, so I'm not sure how to do that, but I'll figure it out. And I agree with you regarding the executive orders. I think people forget how many executive orders Joe Biden signed, including executive orders that essentially mandated schools that were high schools and middle schools and elementary schools that were receiving federal funding, essentially mandating that they teach gender identity, that they view gender identity as a protected feature of people's identity. So I think there's a lot of hypocrisy when it comes to politics in that sense. And I would actually really love it if you could repeat the name of that organization, because I was very taken aback. I've never even heard of it. Kevin, I'm going to pass this off to Kevin because he may know of that organization and I do not.
No, I would like you. Yeah, can you please repeat the organization? Because I also was surprised. I've never even heard of them.
I wrote down critical therapy, but I missed the third word. So it's critical therapy
Was it
something.
Institute?
Sorry, I just brought Ava
Oh,
back up
good.
as a speaker. I'll give her a second. Yep. Go ahead, Ava. Take yourself off mute.
Sure. Critical therapy antidote. They are particularly pushing back against critical studies. So in general, this particular move. I can. I think we follow each other, Forrest. I can just DM and you can share with Kevin. But there are some interesting sort of things happening. I also just wanted to. Sorry, one last question. If you're going to be doing research, do you think you're going to get ethics permission to do research? Because that seems to be one of the problems in the arena, or do you think that Trump's actions will help you to get ethics approval? But
It's a sort of a frustrating situation, in my opinion, because we're living through the replication crisis where in peer reviewed journals, I'm always blanking on the exact number, but it's like roughly 80% of peer reviewed studies are not replicable. And now they're following this sort of postmodern form where they're all autoethnographic and written from a place of positionality. They're basically just like people's biographies, and you can't peer review a biography. So, in my view, those journals have lost basically all their credibility. But at the same time, people are constantly sort of people who have criticisms of our research tend to malign it from the stance of it has not yet been peer reviewed. So I understand that that is a necessary sort of a necessary evil that I have to ally myself with. And I'm just going to be, I mean, Kevin, we're very like minded on this. And together, we're just going to be very, very annoying until we have approval to do our research, because we're not trying to hurt anybody. We just want to ask some questions and get some honest answers.
And just you can't get anywhere on this topic unless you like force them to give you a chance. So this is one thing we've had to learn. So
Kevin,
yeah. Oh, Kev, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. Well, in terms of what's happening at university campuses, going back to the original question, I encourage people to check out Karlin Borisenko's work. Like, she has hours and hours and hours of streams where she infiltrates the meetings of activists on campus, but a lot of that includes teacher unions and lecturers and things like that. And they are doubling down pretty hard because they're kind of true believers. They at the academic level, they're kind of using gender theory as a way to kind of break through. It's kind of all kind of Marxist, but it's like using gender theory to break the gender binary, to progress humanity into a new utopic blah 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 wank wank wank. Um, so they really, really, really believe it, and they're not. They're just finding ways to skirt the executive orders, from what it looks like. Even including like Christopher Rufo is on the board of a college or a university in Florida that went anti-woke in a big way a couple of years ago. And they burn all the gender textbooks and shut down that department. And then probably almost a year ago now, they invited Judith Butler to speak on campus, and it's recorded. You can find it on YouTube, and there's no pushback whatsoever. She basically just gives a queer theory lecture in one of the halls, and had like the college bought like 250 of her books and gave them out to students. So the colleges are like not playing ball really at all. but I'd encourage people to check out. There are actually a few people now that are doing that sort of work where they infiltrate the far left.
I'm just trying to get this straight, and I'm gonna let Kevin respond, so I'm gonna be really brief. But you're saying that a school that Chris Rufo is on the board of invited Judith Butler to speak? It sounds like the setup to a joke.
Is this the new college in Florida? Quote, new college in Florida?
Yeah. You can find it on YouTube. They hosted Judith Butler, and Chris. I think that, like, one of the things that conservatives seem to do is they make these pronouncements that the woke shit isn't going to happen anymore. Pardon my French, but they don't police it. They don't follow up. So, like, it really needs to be stamped down really hard. And they're not following up. So if you, I would imagine, it's definitely on Carlin's channel because I watched her live where she streamed it. But if you put Judith Butler New College into YouTube, the video probably will come up.
Thanks. Yeah, that's interesting. I didn't know that. And so I also agree with what you're saying though, where we get a lot of like great conversations and then not. And by the way, I would love to know more success stories, but from what we're seeing, it's like we need to change the way we approach certain things in academia, and then very harshly enforce it. I would love to teach. I'm trying to get this one professor at the University of Michigan to co-teach with me, where we would teach a psych class, and we literally just don't mention the word transgender, non-binary, none of that will ever be mentioned. But we're going to ask topics that are currently sparking those words. So it would kind of be like bringing us back to a normal place. But I mean, we would have to enforce it. Yeah.
Okay, do we have any other questions before we wrap up?
Not,
Looks like we don't.
yeah, I'm not seeing any.
Okay. All right. Well, I'd like to thank our guests, psych researchers Kevin Waldman and Forrest Romm. It's been great talking to you. Congratulations on your research. Thanks for sharing your research with us and your insights, and for coming on this DIAG X Space. Great to talk to you.
Thank you so much for having us.
Yeah, thank you so much, and thanks everybody for listening and asking questions. It was really great to be here.
It was.
Right.
And for our listeners, if you haven't already done so, please join DIAG by clicking the join button at di-ag.org, di-ag.org. Our power to reach our lawmakers is through our numbers. It's important to show that we're a silent majority who believe in classic liberal principles, following the science, including on the reality of sex, ethical, evidence-based medicine for all, the power of civil discourse and open dialogue, advocating for the rights of women and girls to sex-based spaces, honors, and opportunities, LGB rights, and the necessity of a compassionate, reality-based society where truth matters. Thank you all for joining us, and have a good rest of your evening.